Hello automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm back with another 2018 smart home year in review, and quite obviously from all the products around you, or around me rather, we're here to talk about the Amazon Echo and their voice assistant and all of the new products, new features, new upgrades that they put out here in 2018. So let's get going. Now, of course, with this review of the year in general, at the end, what I'm going to give you is a grading for Amazon in the end as it relates to smart home, home automation, and in general, automating your life. The year for Amazon comes down to just a few incidents or events here that occurred to me, and the biggest one was really their hardware event late in the year where they introduced 21 new products, and you're seeing some of them on the table here, not all of them. The Echo Dot 3rd generation, the 2nd generation of the Echo Plus, the brand new Sub here, and the 2nd generation of the Echo Show were all prime products that were released here by Amazon in 2018. Now, some additional products that maybe aren't on everyone's radar, but were interesting expansions as far as I'm concerned. You know, the Echo Auto, we'd seen some other makers produce the Amazon voice assistant on board a device that went in the car, but now Amazon has their own. There's also the Echo Input, which is basically a Chromecast audio, if you're familiar with the Google product suite here. And really, you know, from there you have the Link, the Echo Link, which is intended to tie into receivers, the Link Amp, which is intended to be its own kind of, and you know, just a ton of other products like the clock and the microwave, things like that that came out that really shifted the paradigm of what we expected from a smart home product. Another product they released here was the Amazon Smart Plug, and I've used it a few times on the channel now, and I put it in a couple of demos, but ultimately, what this signifies to me is that Amazon is going to follow the same approach that they follow on their Amazon Basics, and the microwave's another example of this. What they do with those Amazon Basics products is they basically replace the best-selling item on Amazon with their own. So they see someone making a lot of money, and they go and they take that space. Now, there were a ton of, and still are, a lot of smart plug manufacturers and creators, but Amazon has gone and tried to take away that market, and that is what they are very, very good at, and that also brings more people into the Echo suite of products. The other thing we saw over 2018, you know, the Fire TV Cube and the TV Recast, those are really interesting products. We also saw great improvements with the Fire tablets as well, so those really grew in terms of capability. They started to get their voice assistant on board, and they started to look much more like smart displays over 2018. In terms of expansion, you know, Amazon was out there and they had over 40 countries with the capability of buying an Amazon Echo product, and that started in 2017. Now, they've since expanded, and some websites say they're in 80 countries and others say they're still around that 40 number, but where they haven't really upgraded, and they did a little bit of this year. You know, we saw them go into France and Spain and Mexico, Italy as well. They went into those countries this year with a much fuller rollout, and what I mean by that is they started to get the language and they localized as well. So, you know, really, when we get right down to it, Amazon only has a few languages. You know, you can add English, German, Japanese to those languages I already mentioned, and then otherwise the voice assistant doesn't come in any additional languages. So relative to some of their competitors, which I'll talk about a little bit later, they didn't expand a ton in terms of language capability. They sell their product in a lot of places, but it's not localized for the people who live there. In terms of expansion on the other side though, when we talk about some of their capabilities and we get into what the devices can do now and the voice assistant can do, you know, they went from 4,000 connected devices and services to over 20,000 later in the year, and they're well over that now. There's over 50,000 skills now in that Amazon voice assistant store there. So those are incredible expansions in 2018. 2018, and that gives a ton of capability, and that's what Amazon is relying on in a lot of cases. But they've also opened up their device to a ton of developers, and so they're relying on the community to develop just as much, but they're putting out these APIs or these developer kits to allow people and companies to build off of, and that's where they really succeeded in 2018. And just to give you a few examples, this was a little thing, but it opened up a lot of doors for them. The contact and motion sensor API that they put out late in the year allows people within skills now to utilize the motion sensors and the contact sensors. So you can have skills that now rely on that. And obviously over the year, we saw the routines capability improve with Amazon utilizing that API. So they were able to add in these devices, Zigbee type of devices or contact and motion sensors in general, later on in the year to your routine. Some of those other things that they built, there's a whole new API for cameras, and this allows, companies like Wisecam to go and get fully integrated, allow two-way communication, all within the Echo suite of devices. So that's going to mean your smart displays, obviously, when you're talking about seeing what's going on with your camera on, say, a service like Wisecam. And it's going to allow a lot more companies to have better and deeper integration into basically the Echo system with their cameras. And that also applies to doorbells as well. So that API was for both cameras and smart doorbells. Another couple of late year APIs, they have a security panel API. So that's going to allow companies that already have a security panel in your home to update that device and then go ahead and connect in with your Echo devices. Now, on top of that, you think about music streaming. Well, that's been opened up as well and allows companies to develop skills for their music service without creating a whole default connection like Apple Music did here late in the year. So there's just been an incredible expansion of the ability to create skills and the functions that you're going to have access to. And this extends all the way down to users just like you and I who aren't programming anything. And the example of that is Amazon Blueprints. So that was the ability to create your own skills. They were relatively basic, but that came to us here in 2018 in a big way, and you were able to go and create your own skills. So big improvements in terms of accessibility. Some other service capabilities that came out, you look at Amazon Key, which also included the ability to go ahead and have packages delivered to your car. So Amazon Key allowed, with certain smart home locks, to allow Amazon to put the package inside your home, which is a big deal right now with a lot of people going out and stealing packages. On top of this, we've seen this Amazon Guard service start to be talked about and start to be built into the next generation of devices. So you're going to be able to essentially have monitoring through your Echo devices. So they're really shifting how much these devices can do, and that's all started in 2018. So let's talk a little bit about the functions that really just came right into the Echo devices, and we'll start with music here. You go to Apple Music late in the year. This is a huge request from a North American market standpoint. Apple Music is one of the biggest services. Obviously, Spotify is kind of carrying number one, but Amazon already has Spotify on the list of connected music services. So to get Apple and Spotify, they're really hammering home that they're ahead of Google on this and really still ahead of Apple on this. That's a big deal. They also added some functionality. Amazon Music got playlist management. There's an equalizer capability. And then on top of that, you're able to cast, which started to pair later in the year with the speaker pairing capability that showed up. So if you have two Echo Dots or two Echo Pluses or two Echoes, you can go ahead and create a 2.1 system with the Echo Sub. And of course, you can still create the left and right stereo pairing channel in general general. So all of that, you think about where we were in multi-room audio, and you were able to do a few things there in terms of multi-room audio, but now with a speaker pairing, I know it doesn't have Bluetooth, I know it's not connected to everything, but now with Apple Music integration, that's a lot of music services and a lot of capability on stereo pairing and a lot of capability on music in general just showing up in 2018. The next big thing I want to talk about, I'll quickly throw in SMS messaging on Android in the US showed up early in the year and really hasn't been expanded since, but that capability is the first of its kind, doesn't exist on any other service basically here in the smart home. You're able to do a couple of things with services like If This Then That, but ultimately it's the only of its kind. Now, the big thing that I want to talk about is the growth in routines, and really this is the growth in smart home capabilities in general, and that's what Amazon hit hard on their devices this year. So when you think about early in the year, device triggers, those triggers, the echo button triggers, things like that came earlier on in the year, or lots of those capabilities came earlier in the year. But what started to happen later in the year, we just saw location-based reminders, or location-based routines rather, those really drive different capabilities or different functionality with your routines. And I think that again pushes them way ahead of Google. And it's something I talked about in my 2018 Google year in review, which I'll put up in the top right corner right now if you want to go watch that video as well. But the routine growth just on the trigger side really created home and life automation for what I'll say the first time in one of these smart assistant speakers. And when you add in the resulting actions that they added here in 2018, the ability to create that automation is incredible. And just from a simple thing like the ability to wait. And that's an action that I think I'm going to spend a lot of time on in 2019, to be honest, because it can do so much in terms of creating one routine and one automation, and then having it really drive a lot of things in your life. You think about taking a nap, or you think about scheduling a workout, and you can do all of those things with one routine now, really set the scene, execute, and then and then close it off however you want and turn that scene off. So all kinds of capability with simple things like wait. Another major thing to talk about, and this kind of snuck in later in the year, but we saw Amazon making all kinds of business arrangements. We saw the latest with Apple and Apple Music. That is what Amazon has been so good at as well. And the biggest one this year is probably Microsoft. And what we saw is Cortana and Amazon's voice assistant integration almost entirely now on all of these devices. You can go ahead and get Cortana. The other thing we saw, and this is the reverse of that, the Amazon voice assistant is now on Windows 10. So you can go ahead, you can get that, and you can start to integrate it into how you work with your computer or your PC now. So, we saw Microsoft sell the products now. They're selling Echo devices. We're seeing better integration with email, and really over time, this is bearing more and more fruit for Amazon and Microsoft, really. On that note, Skype integration occurred very, very late here in the year, and that kind of turns us over to the smart displays, where we also had that camera, those visuals really start early on in the year in terms of cameras showing basically what's happening in your home, and really deep integration continuing throughout the year. So we have great smart display integration for those doorbells with a camera, and some of the cameras in general, the smart home cameras. Obviously, better integration with brands like Ring and Arlo, but we saw things like Canary show up in in the voice assistant here and on those smart displays. On top of that, I talked about the Fire HD tablets. You know, you have the hands-free mode where you're able to essentially use them like smart displays, and you can get the voice assistant there. That's a big change for such an inexpensive device. And then on top of that, we had a couple little things like the whisper mode, and those little integrations or changes here with the Echo devices. Those are big improvements. They just change the way you use the device a little bit on a daily basis. So ultimately, that's a lot of the big capabilities that I want to talk about. There were obviously a lot of other little things that I could talk about for hours here with Amazon and their voice assistant. Now, in terms of starting to kind of give you a grade here for Amazon, because really I've been very positive throughout this, and there's a lot of reasons to be very positive. Amazon has made great business deals all throughout the year that have improved these products. They have continued to upgrade things like, you know, this Echo Plus version 1. It is almost just as capable as the Echo Plus 2. There's very little differential, if any. I can't think of any right now off the top of my head. But, you know, really, they didn't have to do that. They just are, even though they're putting out these new versions of the product. So that's really positive stuff that creates trust, and we'll talk about trust here in a little bit. We talked about those new skills, you know, 50,000 skills, 20,000 products and services connecting to these devices. That massive growth. They did get into some new countries here with full localization, is what I'll say, and they are working very hard to get into a market like India, where they're using their Clio capability to basically build that recognition of the language there, and a number of localized languages there, right? So, you know, they're doing a lot of good things that are setting up for 2019 in terms of localization and building their languages and really making these devices more powerful internationally. So those are all very positive things. What I keep coming back to, though, and this is where I start to turn a little bit negative with Amazon's products, they had a number of incidents over the year where their voice assistant is basically listening to people when it shouldn't be. It's recording things when it shouldn't be, and it's saying things that definitely shouldn't be, like go kill your foster parents. Now, you know, some of that, I would say, is eroding trust. And there's one other thing that I keep coming back to as well. And what's happened recently, and people keep saying I'm crazy as I say this to you, but the studies continue to show that Siri is ahead of Amazon's voice assistant in terms of response and understanding what you're saying in general. And how this impacts Amazon and really overall impacts them, I think, greatly. What that does is that erodes that trust a little more as well. I mean, you know, when I do demos for you guys, I show you when it works. But there are a lot of times when I sit here and I go, okay, how do I actually say this? And sometimes I have to look it up. I shouldn't have to do that. I use these on a daily basis. So why am I having to look up how to put something into a list, or how to put something into a custom list, or how to create a custom list? Why am I having to look up those things? It's because sometimes this device just doesn't get it right, and the voice assistant just doesn't get it right. To put this in perspective, Siri is now above on every study I've seen in the last 2 quarters, and they're above by a few percentage points, and Google is way ahead, usually upwards of 10 to 15% better on, say, a study of 400 to 1,000 questions. So that tells you a lot when we're talking about gaining the trust of these devices. So really, that's my big problem with Amazon. They also created a little bit of confusion with, you know, their 21 products that came out here. I mean, how do I know the difference between the Echo Link and the Echo Link amp? That's, you know, that distinction is going to be lost on a lot of people. I can tell you what it is, but people are going to have to want to figure that out, and they're going to have to want to search that out. So will everyone do that? No. Do they want to know why they need a clock from Amazon that has this voice assistant on board? I think people will struggle with that initially. And so it's really up to Amazon to tell that story. And I don't think they've quite got there. So those are kind of my two main issues. I mean, obviously Amazon did some amazing things this year. Let's not kid ourselves. To put out that many products in the smart home space and to create as many partnerships as they did in these new services, which include partnerships. You think about the cars being delivered to, that took GMC 2015 and newer, partnering with OnStar. It took a lot of things to do Amazon Key in cars. So incredible stuff, but I really struggle in 2018 with their voice assistant not improving, despite all of these announcements where they say, hey, we're improving it, hey, it's getting better, here's how we're getting better, we're learning through this way. It hasn't seemed really any better to me. In terms of a final grade for Amazon here, I gave Google a B overall in their year here in terms of home automation and in terms of automating your life. Now, what do I give Amazon? This is actually something I've struggled a little bit with here. Now, I'm going to give them a B+, and ultimately it comes down to their partnerships that they're creating, not just with companies like Microsoft, like we talked about, not just like companies like Apple, but they're also creating partnerships with developers through their release of these APIs and these capabilities of really developing new, better skills for their whole ecosystem. And as they do that and they really connect with the developer community, they are creating better and better functionality for you in 2018 and now in 2019. And this is one of the things I'm going to focus on here in 2019, is showing you some of those skills, some of those capabilities that really push these devices ahead further and further and allow you to take full advantage of the capabilities of these devices. The one big thing for Amazon really to do is to get their voice assistant up to where Google's is. They need to catch up on languages. They need to catch up in terms of understanding and responding to all kinds of things. They have some real gaps on their voice assistant right now, and they need to plug those holes before I think ultimately they can hit the next level. So there you have it, guys. Go ahead, let me know down in the comments. That's what I'm giving Amazon this year, and please look forward to my 2019 predictions here for the smart home and home automation space. I'm going to give you my full look ahead for what I think Amazon and Google and Apple and Samsung and lots of these big makers are going to give us in 2019. And I think you'll get a bit of a sense of where I feel they're lacking and where I think they're headed here in this video. But ultimately, look for that here this weekend. And thanks again, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.